Do you need to have a sheet of paper out? Do you need a pen or a pencil? I don't care which you use.
I don't have any.
Anyone see radio this morning? Has anyone seen radio?
I don't know any of it.
Son? So, 5 questions. First question, what type of ecological relationship is most likely to reduce the population? 2, what 2 species will we be in, that's not grammatically correct. Will we be investigating in the activity today? 3, what will represent the wolf in the activity? 4, what will you do with your data? And 5, what do you think population density might be? So at least 3 of these you ought to be able to give without having read the packet. Four out of 5. Okay, so 4, what will you do with your data? Like, once you've collected data, how are you going to display that data or share that data with other people or interpret that data? That's something that, even if you haven't read the packet, you should probably be able to figure out the most likely outcome.
Is it like a one-word?
Well, I've given you as much information as I'm going to give you.
Alright.
Nice try that. But
Is 3 based off of 1? Or are we talking about
it's 3 based off of 1. No, like what physical thing are we going to use in the lab to simulate the world? Raise your hand if you need more time. All right, 60 seconds on the clock.
Elaborate on number 5.
What do you think population density might be?
Yes.
So you know what density is. And you know what a population
Like how
is.
many?
But you can't talk it through out loud.
Okay.
Yes, not what you
I just need to use it. This time I can credit it.
Okay. $20 seconds left. $10 seconds. All right. Make sure your name is on it and swap it with the person to your right or left. You cannot grade your own paper. So as long as you swapped it with someone, they can then swap it with someone else, however. All right. On that, you need to write graded by and your name. Tom, not literally your name. Like you would write graded by Tom. Okay. All right. All right, so number 1, what type of ecological relationship is most likely to reduce the population? A predator-prey relationship, predation. If you said predation or predator-prey or some variation on that, That's a check. What two species will we be investigating in the activity today?
Wolf and elk.
Wolf and elk. Should have been able to get at least one of those from the next question.
That's true.
Number 3, what will represent the wolf in the activity? A spoon. Number 4, what will you do with your data?
Put on a graph.
Graph it.
Yes.
All right, number 5, what do you think population density might be? The number of organisms in a specific area of space. So why don't we do mass over volume?
What?
This is a general question. Why don't we do mass over volume?
Because the masses of different animals are different. So it's not like
True.
okay, for population density it's like
By the way, y'all, you should listen to this answer because your test next week may have a question like this on it.
well, like for population density you're not measuring like the weight of the animals because that would like vary the data differently since all of the animals weigh different sizes
Mhm.
based on, you know, where they are in their development or the food intake. So it's for population density, you're just measuring how many of these animals in that specific species there are in the population.
True,
And-
but keep in mind, we talked about last time that we often want to talk about energy, and we can't easily measure energy, so we usually measure what when we're talking about ecology? What do we usually measure instead of energy? Biomass, right? So we usually actually do go by biomass. There's a reason, though, that you're right, we do count number of individuals, not mass. If we were looking at a population of elk, how easy would it be to measure the mass of all the elk?
It would not be realistic.
It would not be realistic, right? We couldn't actually expect to do that. Could we estimate the biomass of all the elk if we knew the number of the elk? Could we figure out the average mass of an elk? Yeah, we have the average mass of humans, we have the average mass of lots of organisms. So if we have the number, we can estimate the biomass, which means we can then further estimate the energy involved. Why do we use area, not volume? What does volume measure? Length times width times height. Why do we not care about height when it comes to the elk? They can't fly, and they don't live in trees, right? So if we were talking about birds, you actually would sometimes in like say a tropical rainforest use volume as a measure of some sort of ecological feature. When it comes to most habitats though, you're not that worried about vertical space. All right. So in this packet, there are a few modifications you're going to need to make. So you are going to be working with your groups. If every member of your group has gotten at least 4 out of 5, so you do need to get your papers back, then you will get 5 quiz points added, bonus quiz points added.
Everyone?
Everyone in your group. Yep. To incentivize you to encourage each other. All right.
No!
I will take it under advisement whether to modify that, but that's my current plan. All right. Few things to change in your packets. You should have your packets out now. You're going to want to flip to the part where it's giving you the directions on what to do. So you're going to notice on page 8, it has some general guidelines for the simulation. It says the field will only sustain up to 100 elk. For your field, you are going to initially use a paper plate. However, I would like you to also use a bowl for a second run of this activity. Why would I want you to use a bowl? What would a bowl simulate differently than a plate?
Concentration.
Concentration or those are the things we just talked about. Population density. So if you have a bowl, it's going to have a higher population density at some point than would the plate. There's more real estate in the plate. The other thing I want you to keep in mind, your habitat can never have less than 10 elk. So if after predation has happened, you are down to say 5 elk or 3 elk or somehow 0 elk, you have to return that population to 10. If you ever have all of your wolves die, you have to return that to 1. You never have less than 1 elk, or sorry, less than 10 elk or less than 1 wolf at the beginning of any round. Yep.
Okay, so it says that it must always contain 10 elk, but then it also says after predation has occurred, the remaining elk population will double.
Mhm.
So what if there's only 3 left?
So if there are only
Just
3 left and you
automatically
would
go to
double up
10?
to 6, then you automatically go up to 10.
But then if you have.
But if you had 9 left, it would go up to 18. Yep, you got it. The other thing, a single swipe with the spoon represents 1 wolf. Each wolf must eat at least 1 elk to survive. Now, if you want to modify yours for subsequent runs because you've been really efficient and you want to explore some other things and look at maybe if the elk are starving and so don't sustain wolves as well or something like that, you can. But if they eat at least 1 elk, they survive. They must eat 5 elk to reproduce once. So if you have a single scoop with that spoon and you get 5 of the items in it, also we're not using beans, we're using Skittles. So you can eat the Skittles when you're done with the activity, which incentivizes you to use the spoon and not your hands. Anyway, if you get 5 Skittles, you get a second wolf. If you have 2 wolves, how do you simulate 2 wolves? 2 swipes. Okay? If your 2 wolves collectively get 5 Skittles, but one of them got 3 and one of them got 2, do they reproduce?
No.
No. Got it? Okay. Let's see, anything else to keep in mind? That's it. So the other thing on here is there is graphing paper in this. You'll notice this is graphing paper unlike you have likely ever seen before. This is logarithmic graphing paper. If you're struggling with this to understand how to do it, absolutely ask me to come over and help. Okay? Do you need to go to anything over 100 on this scale? So the top of the scale should be 100. And then if it's logarithmic, what are you going to count down from? 10s, right? So that way you can scale the whole thing. This is going to allow you to compare 2 populations that otherwise wouldn't be really comparable. I'm going to have some other regular graphing paper to come around with. I do want you to prepare a regular style graph just so you can see the difference and see why this is more informative to use. Any questions about any of that? Feel confident? Okay. Go back, work in your groups. Spoons or bowls or plates, I do have those.
Mr. Moorehead.
Yep. Yes, sir. Okay.
Cute. Brushing. That was cute.
Oh, why should that?
It's no longer available.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't forget the step where your eyes should be closed.
Can I do the first swipe?
So the initial elk population is 10. The initial wolf population is 10.
Wolf survivors.
I think that's for the rest.
You had your eyes open.
Now we got 30.
I saw you. I saw you. Oh, is a wolf born now? Wait, if there's 2 cases.
Try again, no.
Now the remaining elk population. Oh, so that doubles.
Let's pour them out.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, now there's 24 elves. We have 1 initial, 1 wolf, and 1 wolf's born. So now we got 2 wolves. Now we're gonna have 2 swipes. What? 8 more.
Yo,
1, 2, 3.
can I get your attention quickly?
7, 8, 9, 10.
Since you only have to have 1 graph and one data table per group for each simulation, and you're simulating once with the plate and once with the bowl, I would recommend that you keep some of your data tables and graphs aside to use when you're doing the bowl. Only use like one or two of them with the plate.
No, you don't.
Can I just divide this into
Because there's not more than 10.
Can I just like divide one down?
Yes, you could absolutely do that.
Oh, wait, you said.
Okay, that's 30. Oh
Oh, yeah, you're right.
The elk population is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay.
I got one.
You got one? Let's go.
It went from 0 to
Yo, keep in mind your wolf or not, your elk population cannot exceed 100.
Alright, here you go. Shake it up. Let's go. This needs to be a real simulation. I just want to.
And then most guys have
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. 7. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 7. Another one born. 5.
You're up to your
7 and 5.
So we have 25 generations. Okay, keep going.
15.
Okay, I guess this is going to be 3.
That was 3.
That's 2 all now.
Okay, we need to read one.
Where did you get You have last. I have 4.
5.
That's 26.
By the way,
But we have a lot of days.
Just go up to 100 and give it to me. We have that.
I'm saying it will save you a lot of time.
They're 30, so that was 6. Wait, stop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, yeah.
Oh, I see. I see. This is 20.
Oh, wait, no, 5. So, wait, how many?
The only person I've ever known to already do it that way.
How do we set this up?
Is there a limit to how many blows you can do?
No. You can end up, with an absolute ton of wolves, but you're going to see that has a result when it comes to elk.
You said before the activity began that each wolf needs at least 1 elk, but it says here the wolf must eat up to 5 elk or it will die.
Yeah, notice that up to.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really badly worded, which is why I wanted to go over it ahead of time.
Okay.
No. And it's 5 or more, it reproduces.
Okay. You have 5 swipes, okay? 5 more? No, you have 5 swipes.
Right. Because you can never have.
And the wolves get. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wolves.
Yes. No, they won't die. They keep coming back.
Well, you know what I could do? I could bring another strategy.
You could. 7, 8. Yeah, you could do that. That's great. Or we can have like a bomb drop on them. And the whole population.
You're not.
Okay, 4, 0.
You had one thing, but that's what you
Wow, we ended with 2 wolves and 10 elks. Oh, and 4 elks. Yeah, I'll graph the wolves. Are we doing a bowl? Yeah, and you two just do it. I'll just graph them. I have an extra data table.
I got, oh baby, 7. Yeah.
One should have at least 15 generations from the bowl simulation, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, please sit down. So, all right. Josh, how would you describe the increase in the elk population? In either one. Like, how does the elk population change?
It increases until the wolf population is too large when it increases quickly.
So how fast does it increase?
Very quickly.
So if we're describing this mathematically, what would be the name for something that increases more and more and more and more and more? It increases exponentially, right? And then when the wolf population catches up with it, it falls off. Does the wolf population, ladies, does the wolf population increase simultaneously with the elk population? What happens? So, Eamon, you said no. There's a little gap or a delay, right? This is called an offset oscillation. So, anytime you see a graph of 2 populations where you see one increase and then that results in the increase of the other one, and then if the second one increase, the first one falls, that's almost always the result of a predator-prey relationship. So even if you don't know whether it's predator and prey, like for instance on the handout y'all had a little while back where there were the hares and the bobcats, although they were called hares and lynxes, there are some people who did not know what a lynx was, but they could still figure out from the interaction in the graph that you had a predator and a prey. So, Lauren, what was one of the advantages of having this particular graph format instead of a normal, like, linear graph?
You can see the trend better. They like matched each other.
The trends matched each other. So, Tom, why do you think that wouldn't have been true of a regular graph? What's true when you compare the wolf population to the elk population?
It's usually magnified by like 10.
So, like a big wolf population, the biggest wolf population y'all had was 30. And like, what was the average population for the elk?
Usually around
Like where?
like 20.
So like,
Well, usually.
it was usually much higher
Yeah,
than,
like 60.
so like 60, almost double the average, or the
Yeah.
highest
We don't have
population. All right, so when you saw these offset oscillations, in which population did they happen more quickly, estimate? Was it in the bowl or was it in the plate? Why would it be in the bowl? Smaller, so a more dense population, which meant what was true for the predator? What was their feeding like?
Oh.
So they would end up eating a lot more. It was much, much easier for them to find prey. In an ecological environment, there are lots of different things that happen faster when you have dense populations. So predation is absolutely one. What's another one that would probably happen faster if you had a dense population? Right, but it's still predation, right? So in that case, you've got herbivores predating.
Like regular population.
Things that could limit a population's growth.
Like
Disease.
Yeah.
Disease is absolutely something that increases when you have dense populations. So when in human history do we know of that we saw that happen with disease? Black Plague. Cities were decimated by the Black Plague. Rural communities were often untouched because they were so spread out that disease couldn't travel as easily. So disease and predation both absolutely are density dependent. What are some things that wouldn't rely on the density of your population? Natural disasters absolutely don't care whether it's a dense population or not. So if you have a forest fire go through a forest, Things will die in the forest whether there are many of those things or whether there are few of those things. What else? Do we ever have climactic things that are not natural disasters? Okay, like what? So there are human interactions that are not density dependent, and that's actually true. I was going to get there next, but yes. Or less, disastrous things than nuclear bombs. You could have like, a building of a subdivision or something like that.
What about
Disease is natural, but it's not density independent. It very much relies on density. So we have two main categories of things that limit population growth. We have density dependent, we have density independent. When you have a density dependent thing, more population means the effects of whatever that are magnified. Like you saw with the bull, the effects of that wolf predation was magnified. You had lots more oscillations. And the elk population was much less stable. What is one thing that can affect, say, birds or something else during the winters?
Like they're flying.
Not even their flying patterns, survival. Let's think about simply survival. Food, absolutely. So that would factor into food sources, and that would be what kind of limiting factor?
I'm sorry, what?
Would that be density dependent or density independent?
Let's see.
Independent? If you have more birds, do you have less food?
Yes.
So then that would be density dependent, right? Because you end up having competition, right? Competition is another density dependent factor. But we're looking for something that happens in the winter, less so in New Orleans than some other places. Snow and cold, right? So if you have a mild winter, do you expect more or fewer things to survive? More. If you have a very cold winter, do you expect more or fewer things to survive? Does it matter how many things there were to begin with? No. So unusual weather or climate changes, natural disasters, human intervention, all of these are density independent. If you're talking about predation or disease transmission or competition, all of those are very much density dependent. Got it? All right. So, with that in mind, I want your group to answer these questions. You do have to have these answered and turned in before you leave.
Give us 4 minutes.
Boys. One packet per group. But I did advise you to, each of you write down one of the questions, like the answers to the questions, discuss them among the group. Each of you write them down, then just staple them together. It saves you time. If you want to have one person write, you can, but. Yes, sir.